Welcome to Keeping You Wise by Keeping It Real, where we bring authentic and real conversations to fuel the soul that you can share with others. Welcome to our 23rd episode, where we will discuss mixed messages, interracial love unfiltered. My name is Paula Bell, if you've never seen me before, and I'm joined by special co-host tonight, Diogenes Ayala. Thank you for co-hosting with me tonight, Dio. How are you doing this evening?
Living the dream. Happy to be here. A little Sigma Zeta shenanigans going on. So, I love that for us. So, love it for our organizations. I'm saying? Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Let's go.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Again, thank you for being here. I think this is going to be a very interesting topic. It's been a topic that people have asked Chris and I about a year ago to host. So I'm very interested to see where this conversation will go today. But before we jump into our topic for this month, I do have a couple of disclaimers. We are not therapists and will not offer any medical advice. We are not trained, qualified, or able to diagnose or treat any form of mental illness or disorder. Some topics may be triggering, so please note that we don't always know where a topic may go, so please feel free to make space for yourself. Again, the purpose of this video cast, in case you've never seen it before, is to have real and authentic conversations that provide wisdom to us all. Please definitely interact with us via chat, no matter what platform you're on. We would love to hear your comments, and if you have questions, please go ahead and post them in the chat, as we may be able to share them or answer them. Finally, make sure to subscribe to Keeping You Wise by Keeping It Real on YouTube and follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you get notifications as well. So let's go ahead and jump in. Dio, who do we have joining us today?
All right. This evening, we are joined by special guest Jazlin Coley, right? Rudy Shepherd, and Daron Richardson. Welcome, everyone. And let's take 2 minutes each to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
I guess I'll go first. One, I'm excited to have this conversation. So thank you both for hosting this space. I think it's really important to have, as being that I'm also in an interracial relationship. On the professional side, though, many folks in Des Moines can find me at Drake University as a director of equity and inclusion, as I also obtained my PhD in education. So I come from a variety of different aspects in this conversation about culture and community and belonging.
Good luck, whoever follows that.
Guess I'll go ahead and go next. Rudy Shepherd.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a tough act to follow, friends. Yeah, no doubt.
I'm happy to be here and have this conversation as well. I have, a long time ago been in a racial relationship, and I think having conversations like this are important. It's good to voice our opinions, our discrepancies, our challenges, and our experiences with other people, and get other perspectives on how people view life in general and view relationships. I am a military vet, so I've had exposure to all kinds of cultures, been around the world several times. I come from a Caribbean background. My family's from Barbados. And so a lot of this stuff kind of hits home for me. I've seen the good and the bad and everything in between when it comes to interracial relationships. So happy to be here.
Great. My name is Daron Richardson. 360 is what I perform under as a spoken word poet. I'm also a teaching artist, teaching visual artist. I am a community member. I don't know that I would consider it an activist, but I'm definitely involved. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation, offering up some insights and just engaging in what I perceive is going to be a great dialogue. I was in an interracial marriage for I think 13, 14 years, something like that, quite a few years ago, about 7 or 8 years ago. So I can speak from personal experience as well. So I'm looking forward to diving into the different angles and perceptions, misperceptions, mixed messages.
I love it. And actually, that's a good way to start into our first question. I also have been, yeah. I also have been in interracial relationships in the past as well. So to anybody who wants to answer, right? What are some assumptions or misconceptions people have about interracial relationships or when they see interracial couples?
Okay.
I think,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
and that always happens, right? It's silence, and then we both start talking at the same time. I guess for me, I just want to acknowledge as a Black woman in a heterosexual interracial relationship with a white man, I found that some of the assumptions that I get held to might be a little bit more relaxed than that of my, my Black men in interracial relationships. So one, that's what stands out, right? The assumptions tend to be a little bit more on the positive side sometimes. Another thing that I would say assumption is I'm either abandoning my community, I am either like fully for white men and I've only been for white men, and I'm not pro-black. So yeah.
Yeah, she hit the nail on the head with that one. That's exactly what I was going to say. I think that's probably one of the biggest assumptions I've seen is that people automatically assume you hate your culture, right? You don't really love your people. You don't love yourself, because otherwise, why would you feel the need to go outside of your race or your culture to date someone or to have a relationship with somebody? And I think that is one of the most narrow-minded perspectives that a person can have, simply because a lot of times you don't really, I've heard this saying in the past, and at one point I didn't agree with it, but now I kind of see why it's a saying. You don't choose who you fall in love with, right? And sometimes it's not about the color of the person's skin, it's not about their religion, it's not about their background, it's just that's who you connect with, right? And regardless of whether they're black, white, Asian, Mexican, doesn't matter. That's who you connect with. That's who you have things in common with, and that's who you chose to spend your life with, or have a significant relationship with. But people just see that, and I think I don't want to take up too much of the conversation, but I'm gonna give you my own personal belief from what I've seen, both in the military and outside of the military. I think a lot of that stems from uh, particularly in the black community, it stems from what we know to be our slavery background, right? And so when you go back to that time, what you'll find is that a lot of the relationships that took place between white people and black people, whether it was a white man and a black woman or a black man and a white woman, was forced. At least that's what we've come to learn about those relationships. It's a forced relationship. They weren't things that people wanted to get into. And so it's in particular in the black community, over time we've also been taught to hate our own people. That's something that's been driven into our communities, where we don't support each other, we don't like each other. You can walk in the elevator and have a black man in there and you automatically tense up, but you have a white man in there and it's no big deal. But that white person is just as capable of doing you harm as that black person. But in our mind, that's how we've been programmed in this society. Black people are dangerous. They're difficult. The angry black woman, the uncultured or uncouth black man. All of that kind of stuff. And so we've been taught to hate our own people. So when we see one of our own going outside of our culture, immediately we think they don't like their own people. It's something about what they see in themselves and what they see in our culture that they're not approving of, or they're not getting on board with, and they must really hate us. Otherwise you would have no reason to go outside your own race and date somebody else. And I think that's a wrong idea to have. I'll let somebody else chime in.
I know
Yeah,
you got something, Deron. I know you do.
yeah, I got a little something, a little something. Yeah, I think that is anti-blackness is definitely pervasive. It is it's in everything. And so why wouldn't it be in your relationships? Why wouldn't it be in your home, in your love life? It's in the bank, it's in in your job, it's it's on TV, it's international, it's local. So why wouldn't it be? So understanding that, I think that's a way, knowing that you can kind of gird your loins going into these different spaces, in particular, like say for instance in interracial relationships. That's something that that I think that it's incumbent upon folks who make that choice to enter into those relationships with that knowledge, knowing that anti-blackness is a pervasive institutional sort of a thing. About the it's not just about the loving and the personal. It's about all these different systems. It's about acculturation. It's about, everything that I listed before. So knowing that is something that you have to bring, say for instance, from our perspective, we are in governance structure, we have Black people. So as a Black person, I think it's something to remember when you go into any space, and the bedroom, the house, or whatever is no exception. You have to be mindful of the ways that it shows up in yourself, and the ways that it could show up in your partner, for instance, through either ignorance or through even something a little bit more tacit, a little, like, I'm sure people have had. I know people now who were in interracial relationships and got as far as marriage or in love, and their white partner, kind of flips, and they start espousing regressive and anti-black, xenophobic, all of these things that are sort of like antisocial positions. And you would think, well, I thought I could see this coming. I didn't know. And I heard that on more than one occasion on friends of mine who are on the other side of these interracial relationships, where these sort of, like, anti-blackness or what have you, regressive sort of antisocial thoughts just pop up out of nowhere, or what they thought was out of nowhere. So I think being unprepared for that can be disastrous. So that's something to think
Nice.
about.
Okay, Dio, you over there? What you thinking about?
So much, but no, I think it's interesting conversation. I think what Rudy said is interesting, and some factual. I think sometimes historically we sometimes I think we put a burden on ourselves, right? We have to, because maybe our family, you'll be the first one outside of your family that's deciding to go into an interracial relationship, right? So it's just the family perspective as well, but the pressure, unnecessary pressure. I think now we're 2026. This shouldn't really be something that should be an issue at this point, right? But in reality, things are happening around us that are forcing this kind of conversation, or like a reevaluation of love, right? Because I think everyone kind of talked through this already, right? But I think that Duran, it's a good point that there's some points that some people just decide, hey, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this, because maybe their friends or family are saying things, right? Sometimes there's that, that side as well. But for those who can go through it, I mean, again, you could have a lot of different things. My children are interracial, right? Like I love them just the same, right? There's no thought to me like I have to talk to them one certain way because they're, of one race or another. So I think it's kind of an interesting kind of perspective. But I did have a question I was going to follow up here, right? So to talk about misconceptions, let's talk about some perceptions. The topic of our audience has been asking us to expand on, and one comment that has been made is, why do Black men who have been in relationships with different races treat those other races better than their own race? I mean, is there factual to that? Is that historically? I mean, what do you guys think about that? Or is that something that, people are saying because they believe that is the case?
I love this question. I
Of course you do.
I, I have a citation. I have a citation. I wrote this out because initially I went down like sort of the folk knowledge, the common tropes that are attached to particularly Black male, white female, or any other non-Black female. But so Black man, white woman, which is its own loaded thing in and of itself, historically, in literature and everything I listed before. It's in the water, it's in the air, it's in every other place. Um, I found that the folk knowledge may not always match up with like the stats, and I was looking at the rate of dissolution of marriage in Black male, white black woman, white woman households. And it was quoted as, let's see, this is Bratter and King. Based on studies, it's been shown in nationally representative studies that the highest rate of divorce with a white wife and a non-white husband are between partners where the husband is black, while the white husband, black wife marriages are significantly less likely to divorce than white couples. So there's an interesting tension there between what we think, what we project onto these couples who happen to be black man, white woman, and the actual results of these interracial marriages, which are far more likely to be dissolved or result in divorce than same race couples. So we're more likely to divorce as a black man and a white woman than a black couple, same race, or a white and white couple, and lastly, to reiterate the fact, a black woman, white man marriage is the least likely. It is less likely to result in divorce than a same race white couple. So, there's that.
I love that the stats just, it's kind of flowing into where I'm currently at in my program. But fortunately, I don't have much to back it up when it comes to, that formal information. And I would hate to generalize a whole group of people, but I do think my experiences connect back to what we were talking about with internalized racism and the fact of, okay, we have to acknowledge not only the racism piece to it, but the piece of gender that plays into these relationships as well. And oftentimes what I hear in my social circles when I'm talking to Black men, those that might date outside of their races, Black women aren't feminine enough, or Black women aren't submissive enough, in whatever ways, right? That's what I'm kind of getting out of the conversation. And I don't know if they're intentionally trying to, or if they know that they're, for lack of better words, dogging on a group of women that they're sisters, mothers, cousins, like, a group of women that they are in families with or in friendships with, but they are. And I think that goes back to that angry Black woman and those internalized racist tropes that we have adopted within our community that then turns out into our relationships, but how Black men might treat white women. And I'll just throw this out here too. Once again, I do want to claim, I don't want to make huge generalizations, but I do see a theme when it comes to Black women dating white men is there's that comment of Black men weren't interested in me. I'm 29 years old. I don't think I've had a Black man come to me and like invest in dates or wanted to be really interested in me besides like the sexual and the intimate pieces of a relationship, right? And that is sad. I don't know where that comes from, but I do know that Black women are talking about this enough for this to be more than just a life experience that I hold, if that makes sense.
Okay.
What's your thoughts, Rudy? Yeah, to say.
Okay. I'm gonna have to go this route and say I think a lot of it boils down to accountability. I think we tend to lack accountability both on the male and female side in how things turn out the way they turn out, right? From what I've seen myself, and I've been married to my wife going on 24 years now, 25 years. From what I've seen myself is that women in general don't want to be held accountable, and the same could be said for men, but it's on a different level. Men don't want to be held accountable as far as taking care of their responsibilities, what they're supposed to do as a man. And I've seen this on both sides. It doesn't matter if you're Black, white, whatever the race is. You have a lot of men who generally don't want to be responsible for being an initiator, being the one who not necessarily controls everything, because I think that's a misconception we have too about relationships, that the man is the one who's in charge, he controls everything. No, you're supposed to work as partners, but as a man, you should be an initiator, right? You should be the one who lays the foundation for the household, be the one who creates a stable environment, so to speak, right? And a lot of men don't want to do that. Um, and like Jasmine said, I'm not going to speak for everyone. I'm talking about from what I've seen personally. A lot of men don't want to do that. They don't want to be that. And some of it could stem from how they were raised. You get a lot of men who just aren't raised with that type of culture or environment, and so they don't even know what that looks like. They don't know what it looks like to be a man or to be a husband, to be a good son or a good person in society in general. And unfortunately, you see it a lot in the Black communities. And that's a whole nother topic for why that happens. But that's where you see it happening a lot. On the flip side, though, women tend to not want to be held accountable for doing their part in helping and being an assistant to that man. Because you could have a man who's doing all the things he needs to do, but that woman, she's sitting there and it's like, oh, okay, you're not doing enough. Well, what else do you want me to do? I'm doing everything I can within my power. I need you to at least help me though. It's not me doing everything and you get to sit back and just chill. You need to come in and be a partner with me and help me. And being a partner doesn't mean you fighting against everything I do. Right? It's not about you just always, oh, I always got to be the voice of opposition. Sometimes even if you feel like the path I'm going might not be the right path, I think a lot of women don't understand the power your voice holds in a relationship when that man feels like he can trust you, he can rely on you and depend on you to have his back. Most men feel like a lot of women don't have their back. They just in it for money or what they can get. And so it's kind of like this thing, like when they hear a woman talking, it's more like nagging. Like, oh, you just want to get on my nerves. You just want to tell me things to pull me down. And so it becomes like always button heads, when in reality, what that woman needs to do, even if you feel I'm going the wrong direction, like, okay, you know what? Feel like you're going the wrong direction. Can we talk about it? Let's have a conversation about it. This is why I feel like you're going in the wrong direction. Not just don't do that. Okay, why? And I'm telling you from my personal experience, because this is how I am. I'm the type of person, if I come, I'm a visionary. I see things, I see big picture things, and like, okay, I'm taking it to my wife, I'm taking it to my kids. We sit down as a family and we're discussing it. We're going through it. And I might not always have all the little intricate details to get to that end goal, but I know what the end goal should look like. And it's like, if you're going to come to me and say, well, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, why? I'm going to look at you and say, why? Because I want to know where your thinking is at. I want to have that conversation. I want to see where you're coming from. Not just, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And I say, why? And it's like, well, I don't know. I didn't really think about it. Well, then how could you tell me it's not a good idea? How could you argue against me on something if you don't have a legitimate reason for going against what I'm saying? These are the problems you find a lot when it comes to, it happens in interracial relationships as well. But these are the issues that I find happening the most, where it's, that man is trying to be a man, and the woman doesn't want to be his help, or that woman wants to be, the new thing is, I'm an alpha female, I'm an alpha woman. What does that even mean? What does alpha mean? Right? I need a man to come and help me stay in my feminine energy. Okay, if I'm a man and I come to you and I say I need a female who's gonna help me be in my masculine energy, the first thing you're gonna do is look at me like, dude, something wrong with you. Why in the world would you need a woman to come and make you, help you be in your masculine energy? Right? There's something wrong with how
That's an
society has
interesting,
programmed
brother
us.
Rudy. That's an interesting point. The whole we brought out masculine, feminine energy. Um, and may seem like a tangent, but I think it applies because even the definitions of masculine and feminine energy are rooted in uh, like ethnology, rooted in that you can't extract them from race. Particularly how we think about, you think about 18th, like 19th century ethnologists and white men who created these gender roles and established that, like, well, men, this is what masculinity is, this is what femininity is, and this is what femininity is in relationship to masculinity, and these are the races that are actually feminine in respect to whiteness. And so whiteness is masculine and blackness is feminine, and within blackness, then you may or may not be allowed. You may be degendered for a while and have been degendered for a while, and then you maybe get to experience gender in the way that these culture makers, these knowledge producers in the 17th, 18th century just invented these notions about like how this is what white men are supposed to be, or what white people are dominant and they're masculine over this. And so I think what I'm getting at is like, how do we know what we know, and why is that the final say? Is that the truth of the matter? Is it robust? Is it something that's durable? This notion that like, well, men are supposed to do this and women are supposed to do that. And are we asking the right questions on how did I get that idea around masculinity? Where did I get that notion from that I'm supposed to do this thing, or that I as a black man am supposed to do X, Y, Z, when in reality, I think that, and I'm just going to editorialize a little bit, I think that black women and men actually have a way of knowing, a way of being that exists prior to like just transatlantic slavery. And so we have conceptions of gender and how it's expressed and how we move through the world that defy a lot of the description and the ethnology and all of the knowledge production that was forced onto us, all of the stereotyping that was forced onto us. We have a way of being that, as evidenced by how we show up in the world and how we are seen and how we are sort of even idolized in places in artistry, entertainment. We are seen as not just one thing, not just like the classic masculine. I think I would go as far as to say that black men and black women, we defy those stereotypes and those tropes, and even sometimes to our own dismay. Where, to your point, Jazlin, where you said something to the effect of where black women aren't this enough or that enough, and that to me represents this way of knowing that's been forced into our heads to see ourselves as something other than this clearly binary Western white notion of like, this is what a man does, this is what a man is, and this is what a woman is. We know, just for example, black men dance more than white men, for instance. Just and the dancing is supposed to be feminine, but the thing that's so attractive about black men and black women is the fact that we defy these constraints. We defy the binary. We inhabit this. We have that. That's the extra sauce. That's the extra sauce there. And I think that we can use that as an antidote to these misconceptions that we have with one another internally, intra-racially, about notions of masculinity or roles or what have you. So I appreciate you bringing up those roles, Rudy, because it reminds me of how masculinity and femininity are actually racialized concepts based on where we live. We can't escape the fact that we all, I assume, grew up in the Western Hemisphere, and so we were enculturated with a lot of Western thinking and ways of knowing. And so I like to bring that sort of thing up. I like to ground the discussion in how you know what you know, why you think what you think, and what's your notion of beauty, what's your notion of facts, or what have you. So that's my perspective on
I had a quick follow up. So Duran, you quoted some statistics. Where is that from? The statistics that you quoted, just so our viewers can get more information or get really want to delve into that.
The one about interracial is in the document is titled "Interracial Couples at Risk: Discrimination, Well-Being, and Health." And in that quote cites another study, which is what did I say? Bratton. The blurb is Bratter and King from 2008, and that is That's
okay. No, I know people would probably want to look more into that, right? I mean, statistics.
For sure. For sure.
So I appreciate you kind of giving that follow so people can see that. So okay.
Yeah.
All right, Paula, do you have any?
Well, yes, I want to talk about something Jasmine said really quick, and then I am going to ask a different question, right? Okay, so I got to say this because I just got to get it out because that's just what I do on these podcasts. I'm sick and tired of hearing that Black women are unapproachable. We are too much. We are too yeah, you said alpha woman, that's fine too, but it's almost like we are just too hard to get along with in relationships. Our expectations are too high, our standards are too high. We are we're just that sort of always want to have that conflict, that debate. There probably are some women who are like that, right? Who are Black women, but not all Black women are like that. And I do feel it goes back to lived experiences. It depends on what you've been through in your life on why you might respond or interact the way you do, right? And that's with anybody. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Black woman, but I have heard that a lot, that it's just harder, to your point, Jazlyn.
Yeah.
And that, you know, we're just difficult. We're just hard to get along with. So I just want to dispel that myth. That's not everybody. So if that's how you feel, take those blinders down for a minute and get to know other people, because that may not be the case. Just because you've had one bad relationship or something like that, don't bring that into others. But a question I do want to ask, I just had to say that. I just had to get that out. That was just my own little vent.
Can I add
Ooh,
a
can I
small
can I
little
build
point
on?
to that too?
Ooh,
Oh,
I was
look.
gonna build on that.
Sure.
One thing that I will say is you can take that on the flip side too, right? Right? Like all white women are not going to be the submissive, like little dolls. And I feel like that does them a disservice to their own
True.
agency and autonomy and that piece as well. But I don't hold that, cultural identity. I don't hold that social identity, so I won't speak too much on that. But just thought I
Yeah.
should throw that out there.
Yeah,
Fair.
can I just briefly build on what you were saying, Paul, about
Hmm. Hmm.
I like, and I think that there's another question that we're not asking when we talk about these tropes and stereotypes is what is it about? We're talking about race. Race is in here. It's interracial. So like,
Yes.
what is it about being a Black person in say for instance the United States of America that where you experience these external pressures that affect how you show up in your relationships? Like, are
Yeah.
we asking those questions instead of saying, instead of personalizing and sort of like, for lack of a term, republicanizing, conservativizing, and saying this is your personal responsibility? Are we asking the question like, what systems, what norms, what pressures on Blackness are leaking into our intimate relationships in the way that we raise children, in the way that we interact with our parents, in the way that we interact with the world? How are we stopping and asking that question before we say, well, Black women are this and Black men are that? Are we asking ourselves, what is it about society that creates this response, these coping mechanisms that show up as culture sometimes, that show up as habits, they show up as bad habits? What are we asking about? What are we asking institutionally, societally, that affects this way that we show up? I have another
Hmm.
stat for that later. I have another stat that's like
Mm,
I love talking about that we miss, and how it directly affects the interpersonal and not personal decisions and like bootstrap level like having better morals. It's a stat that I hopefully make a note of that later because I don't want to belabor like on this point, and it'll probably
Hmm.
apply to something later.
Hmm.
It's about missing Black men and stats and uh,
Okay. Okay.
health and incarceration.
mm.
Yes, Rudy. Before I go any further, do you have
Oh,
something you would
I
like to
was trying to
say?
make sure everybody else was done. Actually, my boy hit it right. That right there is the foundation of what's wrong with a lot of relationships, primarily on the either Black male or Black female side, is that we don't know where a lot of our mentality stems from,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
so when you have those Black men out there who aren't taking care of responsibilities, not taking care of their kids, not doing just the responsible thing of being a man or a husband or a father, stuff like that, they were programmed that way. It was programmed into our society to be that way. Just like with Black women, though, what a lot of people I think fail to realize is that Black women at one point, all women really in this country were stay at home, right? It was all about stay at home. That was your role. You stay at home, you cook, you clean, you take care of the household. Then when women got into the workforce and things became like they should have been from the beginning, where there was some sort of equality. I wouldn't say it's fully equal now, but there's some sort of equality that was introduced for women. What Black women got though was, okay, that man isn't doing his job. You could do it by yourself. Learn to be independent. Be on your own. You don't need a man. That's the programming that was given to a lot of Black women. So now when you hear them, it's, well, I don't need a man, or I can do this on my own, right? I don't need a man to do this for me. And everything is, oh, Black men ain't no good, or they all just want the same thing. And so when you talk about, when you make the discussion, when you make the comment about, you're tired of hearing about Black women and they're being difficult and stuff like that, it's because somewhere in the programming, in a lot, not all, like you said, it's not all, but somewhere in the programming in a lot of Black women's head, they see it as a badge of honor to do that, to be that way. It's a badge of honor to be difficult and to be confrontational, and to, because they were taught like, oh, you could do it on your own. Be independent. You don't need him, right? Unfortunately, and this is where I see a lot of the discrepancy when you talk about Black women and white women. For white women, for a lot of white women, how they're raised, from what I've seen, again, I can't speak for all of them. From what I've seen, how they're raised is quite different. They're not taught to be independent of a man. They're taught to be in one with a man. They're taught to, work with that man and build together. So now when you see that Black successful man going after that white woman, it's not just because, oh, she's just not going to be confrontational, or she's not, combative, or coming at me hard. It's because maybe she's willing to work with him and not work against him, right? And this is coming from somebody. My wife is Black, by the way, so I'm just saying, like, that from what I've seen and from what I've heard from a lot of my Black male friends who've dated both sides, both white women and Black women, that's generally what it is that Black woman, she don't want to work with me. She doesn't want to build with me and grow something together. But the white woman, she's willing to do that. And that's what I want. At the end of the day, I want peace, and I want to be able to build and grow and be happy, have a family. I don't want all the drama.
I think it's important
Just
to
saying.
properly, like, historically contextualize what you talk about as far as independence and whatnot. Like, Black women haven't, like, historically have not been able to work from home, be like the homemaker in the same way that in, their contemporaries would be in, like, say, for instance, white women. Like, the independence is a function of the social economic reality in many times, because in a two income household is the best bet, is the best economic um meal ticket for Black families. And so historically speaking, Black women have had to be independent for because of, for many things, their husbands and are getting lynched, or they're succumbing to early death, or they're again forced into these gender roles where they're the male is considered the Black man is considered the primary income. I think that, like, again, we have to contextualize it in history and realize that, like, Black women have not, by and large, not to generalize, but historically and statistically speaking, are not afforded the luxury of being stay-at-home mothers in the same way, to align themselves along with this trope of, like, the Susie homemaker in the 1950s or whatever. The 1950s is a really fraught time, and we are still stuck in that, in a way where we think that there's this woman that's, like, going to have an apron and keep that. That's not the reality for so many Black families in that time period, specifically because of something like FDR and the New Deal and Fair Deal, where we were specifically discriminated against. Uh, and so people that were farmhands and people who were domestic workers, guess who those were? Black men and Black women were pushed out of all of many of the programming that sort of created that middle class in, you know, the early 1900s. So when you think about that, you think about Black women working in homes doing domestic labor and being, you know, barred from organizing, being barred from some of the sort of labor protections that you would get. You get like sort of you can start sort of extrapolate and see later on, like, oh yeah, we've got we've got a Black family that is sort of like split in two because of a socioeconomic pressure, and we're not being afforded the classic, the dream. We're not we're not being afforded the you know, the mythos of there's going to be a man that's going to get out there and get it, and you're going to bring home the bacon, and some, you know, mythological Black woman who's at home, you know, making, like, cooking up the bacon. It's different. There's a lot of us that are missing in action, and I could lead into this. I actually, if you allow me to, like, to talk about the stat of being 1.5 missing Black men from daily life. So knowing that this was the New York Times, you can just Google 1.5 million Black men missing. And so when you think about that, of a group of people, adults, us, you think about 44 million Black people, 1 million of those men being missing, or statistically speaking, you're not going to have enough to partner. Like, if they're succumbing to early death, or they're under state supervision, in jail, locked up, or unavailable to be a part of life, to be an OG, to be a father, to be a husband, to be an uncle, all of these things, then you have a bunch of pieces don't match. When you have a set of numbers and both of them don't match, you have a demographic mismatch. And so again, for land the plane, Black women are independent as a result of, like, racial, social, like, say for instance, mass incarceration. They're independent. It's like a chicken or the egg thing. Did they develop the independence naturally, or they're like, I don't need a man? Or was the man swallowed up by either early death, risk factors, mass incarceration, and they were forced to be? Or Black men forced out of the home because of, you know, some of the sort of like skullduggery around social welfare, saying that, like, if you got a man in the house, you're not going to get these government benefits. So again, external pressures creating internal uh, internal stressors.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Well,
to be
as you
clear,
talk about,
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Paula, but just to be clear, first of all, I agree with everything you just said. But just to be clear, I'm not bashing. I don't want anybody who's listening to think I'm bashing Black women. That's exactly what I'm trying to say, though, is that a lot of both Black men and Black women don't understand where that mentality and the thinking that they've developed comes from. And when you go back and you look to see why you do the things you do, you'll start to realize maybe my relationships will work a lot better, regardless of what culture or race the other person is. Maybe I need to start looking more internally and seeing what is it about me that could be derailing the relationship, and not so much about the other person's race. Because a lot of what we deal with, both Black women and Black men, stems from, like you said, things that have either been programmed or we've been forced into in some way, shape, or form due to the system that we live in.
Yeah, and Duran, as you talk about pressure, let's move to that for a little bit as we talk about interracial relationships. Have you all ever felt pressure to explain or justify your relationship when you've been in an interracial relationship?
I don't think it's for me. I don't think it's the pressure to justify my relationship. It's more to justify my Blackness. And I was thinking about this a little bit. I felt the same pressure when I had different music tastes growing up. I felt the same pressure when I talked different. I felt the same pressure when I dressed different, right? I wasn't Black enough for the Black kids and I wasn't white enough for the white kids. So I've always kind of navigated this pressure from both sides of like, okay, who are you and what does your Blackness look like? And now that I'm in a interracial relationship, I don't know if it's maybe it's because I am a Black woman, you know, engaged to a white man. Maybe that part has some piece into it, but I don't know if it's me necessarily justifying my relationship. It's me justifying my Blackness, as I've always done. And I think those pieces of where I land, of like, oh, she got a few country songs on her playlist, not Black enough, right? Or, oh, she wears this and not that. Like, where people put me in those boxes almost justify who I'm in a relationship with to begin with. So for instance, I've heard several comments from both white men and black men of like, oh, she's the one that dates white boys. And it's like, first of all, it has never been close to white men, right? Second of all, I haven't defined that. Other people have defined that for me based off those previous boxes that I was talking about. So yeah, that, I mean, justification, yes, but not to the relationship alone, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are anybody else's thoughts who have been in a interracial relationship?
My justifications were internal more than anything else. Yeah, like that pressure was internal based on sort of my own social political training, my history, being super duper pro black my whole life, and then people that and like having a sort of an identity crisis, like being in a particular period in my life, a particular disposition, particular set of circumstances, and meeting my ex-wife. So I had to process that and I processed it while it was happening, but it often manifested as like sort of an identity crisis because it was like, Duran, you're pro-black, this and that and third. You just literally finished doing a Kwanzaa celebration and blah 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 blah, and then you go down this different rabbit hole, and now all of a sudden you look up, it's like the talking heads, like, how did I get here? And and so like a lot of that was internalized, like identity crisis and existential stuff just happening, less than people outside of me saying, yo, what's up with Duran? Like, dog, he was just doing the red, black, and green thing. Like, what's up with him? Like every once in a while someone would say something and I'd have much better explanations for it, or better rationalizations and thought and processing now over the last, I'd say probably 7 years or so than I would have back then. But ultimately I realized that, oh, this is all me. This is internalized sort of pressure of like, oh, this is who I was, this is who I am, and where I'm at now in this marriage and raising kids seems to be incongruent with those things. And so it was a conflict because, like, you know, everybody that has parents or is in a serious relationship knows that that's an identity shift, whether you recognize it or not. You have your first child, that's an identity shift that you're not necessarily ready for. You become a new person with new obligations and new directives, and not just responsibilities, but yourself changes. And so that coupled with uh, my what I thought was my my history, my training as as a pro-black thinker and all this other stuff, it just caused a little bit of dissonance. And so I really had to explain to myself why that was going on, and reconcile those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think for me, I didn't have to justify nothing. I didn't care what you thought. I don't date whoever the heck I wanted to date. I was like, you're not in my relationship, so why are you all up in my business? I mean, I was just the type who, if I liked you, I just liked you. It didn't matter all of that to me, right? It's just going through that. I do have to say also, so for those who don't know, Rudy is my cousin. And so we're very close in age and we grew up together. And I will tell you, I did hear a lot, and Rudy, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but we did hear a lot growing up that men ain't no good, or you can't trust them. You shouldn't be around them. All they're going to do is take you for what they want and whatnot. And so when you grow up and that's all you're constantly hearing, yeah, that's going to impact you as you're going along, right? Now, also, what I have to say too is there's just some people who are just holding grudges and just being petty, right? Because of your past relationship. You need to get over it. The relationship didn't work. It's over. Trust the amount of energy you're putting into that. They are not even thinking about you anymore. They've done moved on, but you're holding on to that anger and that pettiness towards somebody who, at the end of the day, they don't represent an entire demographic, right? It's a person who you just didn't get along with. So I think there's some of that plays into this too, that people are holding on to things that they're not letting go of. They're not doing that internal work, Duran, that you talked about, right? Internal, and they're holding stuff against people. And you got to get over that, because I do know there are some females that I do know who cannot stand people being in interracial relationships because of something that's happened to them. And that has nothing to do with these people in these interracial relationships. That has everything to do with you, and you need to get over it. Yeah, you need to get over it. I mean, it's sort of like, and I know, unfortunately, again, I'm not bashing any demographic either, but I am Black and I am a Black female, and I've heard in different circles of how Black females feel about Black men dating white women, and some of it is because they're just angry. It really has nothing to do with that relationship at all. It has everything to do with them. And until you deal with your own issues and your own internal stuff, you're going to continue to have problems no matter who you date, because you're not letting go of whatever that thing is, right? And so I think there's some of that stems with it too. But Dio, I'm gonna pass it over to you in case you got any questions.
No, I don't have any questions. I just, again, I'm kind of with you, Paul. Like, it really, at least in my thought, is really nobody's business but my own. And if you don't have a problem with it, I mean, that's up to you. I mean, I don't like eggs, right? I don't run around some people like, why you eat eggs? Like, it is what it is, right? So like, I don't put that much perspective in my thoughts, right? Like, but that's my mindset, right? And everybody has that mindset, but to me, it's just, I mean, you know, I look at it, I think it's a lot of good discussion here, but people love who they love, right? We talked about this in the beginning, right? And the idea of, I mean, there's a lot of history to it, like Duran said. I mean, there's a lot of history. I mean, even among African Americans, right? Like, think about it. Like, yeah, light skin. Like, everybody on this call is different color, shades of color, right? And so people are like, oh, you only like light skin, you don't like dark. Like, I mean, it's a silly context that we continue to fight. I mean, I'm also Hispanic, right? So even in the Hispanic realm, there's like light skin, dark skin. Like, it's kind of ridiculous to me, right? But also, I just find it interesting, even having family with children, right? Like, because, you know, the stuff that we're going through as adults, kids are also going through now, right? And that idea of like, where do I belong, right? So like, you know, I can speak for me. I'm Hispanic, I'm Black, right? So it depends on who I talk to. People are like, oh, I didn't know you're Black, I didn't know you're Hispanic, or vice versa, right? It's a weird realm that we live in. And it is based upon what Duran said, right? There's a lot of different things on history of why we look at what we look at. You know, people, the brown people bag test. It's entwined in everything that we do. But you know, I'm also hopeful that, I know we're 2026. I feel like we're back in 1972 or 1952, like 62. Like, maybe 25 years from now, 30 years from now, my children, when they grow up, aren't going to have this like this complex that we all have in our own way, right? I think, Duran, you mentioned the fact that, you know, you represent red, black, and green, and then people are like, what's up with you, right? Like, you know, that's, to me, it's kind of troubling, because again, because I'm pro Black or pro this, doesn't mean that because I'm with someone that's a different complexion or different ethnicity, different religion, that I've now abandoned everything that I believe in, right? I think that's kind of a silly, to me, right? I think it's a silly thing to put pressure on yourself, right? Because again, if you are in love with someone, then you're in love with them. Like, so, I mean, I don't know, I can go on for this for like 45 minutes, but I'm just gonna be quiet unless y'all keep talking. But that's what I've been thinking through this whole thing. It's like, yeah, love is love. And it's difficult sometimes when you look at different things, and, you know, I could sit here and say love is love, and there's a lot of complexity to that. But at the end of the day, who you're with and who you choose to be with the rest of your life is your choice, right? And if people don't like that, then, I mean, there's always other options. You know what I'm saying? Like, because again, I've always thought that I dated different people throughout my life, and I never think like, oh man, this person's this color, like this is gonna hurt me politically. No, it is what it is. But I'm from New York too, so maybe that's my perception as well. So I'll be quiet. I'm out.
Paula, I do want to appreciate you for naming that projection piece, because I think that's what has helped me. I'm assuming I'm the youngest on the call. I'm assuming. I don't want to guess anybody's ages.
I'm only 18, bro. I'm only 18.
Okay, never mind.
You can't.
It's a rough
Listen,
18.
one thing about us Black folks, you can't tell how old we are.
You can't tell, exactly.
You
So
got to
I'm
cut
just
them
like, I'm
open. You got to cut them open and count the rings in order to figure out how old you are.
Exactly,
You could be anywhere from 29 to 49.
Exactly. You can never tell. But I say that because I feel like I am definitely entering this space where I'm allowing other people's projections to just be that. But I do want to hold some attention to, interesting enough, some of these projections have come across as a form of care, right? Me being a Black woman in a interracial relationship, especially in this time right now, it's just like, is he going to be able to understand the life that you are navigating right now? Is he going to be able to give you the care and the support that you deserve, especially in these racialized, I mean, we've always been in racialized times, but more dangerous times, I should say, in my lifetime. And then on the other end, I've received support for being in an interracial relationship. I remember having a little boyfriend, and I'm not going to disclose, a family member found out he was white, gave me a high five right in front of my Black brothers. And at that time, thankfully enough, I had that energy in me to be like, okay, what just happened here? Right? You just gave me a high five because you realized I was in a relationship with a white boy in front of my Black brothers. What are we saying? And what am I internalizing? Right? How can I kind of operate through that? And has that influenced my dating decisions? I don't know. I can't say, right? I'm still kind of working through that. But I do think those projections are real. I do think that has helped me kind of separate the noise from my own personal decisions. But I just want to call attention to some of those pieces have came across as a form of like, I just care about you and I want to make sure that you're making a really good decision for your life, if that makes sense.
I think a lot of that comes from the labels we put on everything. We put a label on everything. In particular, in this society, we label everything we possibly can. Like you were mentioning earlier, Jazlin, about people were saying you're not Black enough because you listen to country music, and I don't think people realize Black people listen to country music too.
Beyonce, exactly.
I mean,
like
We
she,
invented
we
it's
it. We
completely
listen
changed.
to it.
Yeah,
Shoot, we
exactly.
invented it.
Exactly.
We never stopped making it.
it's like, and then you hear things like, oh, because you talk proper, you're not really Black. But Black people can't speak proper.
Right. Right.
We can't sound intelligent, because that's really
Right.
what you're trying to get at, is that we
Yeah.
can't sound intelligent. We're supposed to sound ghetto, right?
Right.
And uneducated. But it's because we label everything, and so when people see you not fitting the mold or the label that goes with a particular thing, and you're doing something else, and it's like, well, that label doesn't belong over there, something's wrong
Yeah.
with you. No, I'm perfectly fine because I'm choosing to live my life the way I want to. Something is
Right.
wrong with you if you think I have to conform to what you think my life should look like, right?
Right.
And so I think a lot of the issues we find in interracial relationships stems from people just wanting to label everything. They want to put you in a box. They want to say this is how things should be structured. And if you go outside of that, then no, something ain't right there. And Paula can tell you this. It's kind of like a lot like religion, right? We grew up. All of our family members are Christian, right? But I wouldn't say that all of Christianity is the same. You have your Pentecostal, you have your Baptist, you have your Word of Faith, all of that kind of stuff. And the differences between those denominations is mind-boggling to me, because you're supposed to all fall under Christianity. But there's so many differences, and a lot of those differences stem from just wanting people to be indoctrinated. We want to just have a whole bunch of rules, and if you don't follow all of these rules, then something is wrong. You going to hell by 12 p.m. Right? And it's like, no, that's not how life should be, right? And I'm not going to get all religious and go that whole route, but I do believe personally that God gave us a free will for us to use it. He knew you would date a white man, or you would date a white man, or you would date a white woman, or you might date a Black woman, or Hispanic, or Asian. I don't think he really cared. He was more concerned about how are you treating that person, and how's that person treating you, right? That's what we should really be more focused on, instead of all these labels. Because all these people wanting to put labels on stuff, I can guarantee you a lot of them probably ain't even living by the rules and laws that they set. They not even conforming to the stuff they're talking about, but they feel because they're behind closed doors and nobody can see what they're doing behind closed doors, they can come out and judge everybody else. But it's like, at the end of the day, I feel like nobody should care what race you date as long as the person makes you happy, they treat you well, and vice versa. Right? Stop putting labels on all this stuff. Stop trying to tell people, well, you know, if you ain't doing this, you ain't black enough, or if you going with this race, then you abandoning your race or your culture. Like, get over that. That's my personal belief.
Agreed.
I
Deron,
feel
what
like
you
you laid
got
out
to
a
say
metaphor.
before what you got to end this with, Deron, before I give my final thoughts and turn it back over to Dio to take us home?
I just think that that's just like I appreciate where that led. I was just following it. But like one bead was attached to another bead, and
Yeah.
we went from like the projection piece, and like the freedom from like that projection and judging, and then like that was poetic to transition from that into religion because I feel like I was gonna like end with like a question: is race a religion?
Ooh,
Is it the same thing? Do we need to think about that way?
wow.
If we're clashing in these racial constructs, how does that mimic, you know, a person, two people of different faiths, a Buddhist and you know, a Catholic, or even or a Muslim and a Jew? Like, what is it about how we think about the world, how we see the world, that is so fundamental and tied up and loaded with all this extra baggage? Like, those are, I think, the questions that just keep popping up. I love it when you know, a statement just creates a whole bunch of questions. And just
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
so
And
yeah,
just
I
organic.
love how that poetic that metaphor was. You start talking about, and it just translated perfectly for me on how people think that like you will experience some sort of racial hell if you don't follow the path, or you're gonna be social death or some
Right.
sort of like excommunication. All of these
Right.
the metaphors are there. It's all lined up. So that was, I love how that I love how y'all strung all that together. So it was great
Well,
to
if we were
witness.
condemned to hell, I've been in hell for about half of my life, trying to get out. At this point, with all the
That's
stuff I've done
funny.
in life, crap. Well, again, thank you all for having this conversation. You know, relationships often reflect the world around us. Its beauty, its complexity, and sometimes it's misunderstandings. And when we take the time to actually listen to the lived experiences, which we all shared here, instead of making assumptions, we actually
Yes. Yeah.
create a space for deeper empathy and stronger connection, right? So love may bring people together, but understanding is what allows those relationships to truly grow. And we do have a comment from a LinkedIn user, which I do just want to acknowledge. A mixed man here, Black African father, white Canadian mother, happier than ever. That is a great way to take this one out. So with that, Dio, I'm going to pass it over to you. But really quick, Dio, Jazlin, Deron, and Rudy, when we take it out, stay online and let me bring you all back to the stage so we can process this recording all the way through before we call it a night. But Dio, take us home.
All right. Well, that's a great conversation. Having to be a part of it, at least co-host it tonight. So I appreciate everybody's honesty and thoughts on this really crucial subject. So that's a wrap. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If this conversation sparks something in you, share the episode with someone who needs to hear it, your partner, your friend, your circle. I think it really is important to talk about. Thank you for engaging and listening. To keep the conversations going, please subscribe to our channels and turn on notifications. Turn on notifications. Turn off, my bad. I'm reading too fast, man. Turn on notifications to know when we go live. In addition, please leave comments, as we love to hear from you. It says, remember, as Solo always says, when I'm on solo, but I'll say it anyway. So for a solo, I'll be solo for now. For each one, reach one and teach one. When you know better, you do better. So let's continue to do better. That's really nice. I wouldn't have thought that on my own. So I'm happy he had that written down for me. So
I love
one
it.
love. Yes, thank you.
I love it. Well, that's a wrap, y'all. We'll see you the next time we come live. With that, have a great rest of your week and weekend, and we will see you later.